Have you ever heard the saying, never underestimate anyone? It's a simple phrase, yet its wisdom echoes through the ages, often brushed aside in the relentless pursuit of superficial status and fleeting power. But what happens when that underestimated person, scorned and discarded silently, orchestrates a comeback so spectacular, so utterly devastating that it shatters the very foundation of their tormentor's world? What if the victim you dismissed, the one you assumed was broken beyond repair, was actually playing a long game, a meticulously planned chess match where you, the supposed victor, were nothing more than an unwitting pawn? Today, we delve into a story that isn't just about revenge, though it has elements of that. It's about resilience, the quiet power of a wounded spirit, and the earth-shattering consequences of unchecked arrogance. It's a story that starts with a cream-colored envelope, an invitation to a dazzling charity gala, and a handwritten note designed to twist the knife in an old wound. But what the sender didn't know was that this seemingly innocent piece of stationery was about to become the detonator for a revelation that would leave an entire city speechless and one man utterly ruined. Imagine this, a woman, Natasha Richardson, in her modest apartment, her hands trembling as she recognizes the expensive letterhead on an invitation delivered by courier. It's the logo of a company that once represented her dreams, her hard work, her shared future with a man who had since tossed her aside. The invitation itself, etched in gold lettering, was a formal request for her presence at the annual charity gala, hosted by Benjamin Richardson, her ex-husband, and his new wife, Brittany. The words, "We cordially invite you to join us for an evening of celebration and giving back to the community. Black tie required. Please RSVP by Friday." Were polite, almost benign. But then there it was, at the bottom, scrawled in Benjamin's familiar, arrogant hand. "Natasha, I thought you might enjoy seeing how far we've come. It would be wonderful to catch up on old times. I'm sure you'll find the evening enlightening, Benjamin." That note. Oh, that note. It wasn't an olive branch. It was a gauntlet. It wasn't an invitation to reminisce. It was a summons to witness his triumph and her perceived defeat. Natasha knew that tone, that insufferable condescension. It was the same voice he used 3 years ago when he dismissed her worth, claiming she would never amount to anything without him. The same voice that had echoed in her mind during those dark, desolate months when she truly had nothing but $27 in her bank account and a single suitcase filled with the remnants of her old life. To an outsider looking at Natasha's life, then Benjamin's words might have seemed prescient. She lived. Simply. Drove a regular car, dressed unassumingly. She was a ghost of her former self, a woman seemingly cast aside by a man whose star continued to rise. But here's the thing about assumptions. They are often the most dangerous form of blindness. What Benjamin, and indeed no one in their former glittering social circle, knew was that the woman he had discarded like yesterday's trash now quietly, meticulously controlled an empire worth over $200 million. This revelation, this stunning turnaround, isn't just a plot twist in a dramatic story. It's a testament to the transformative power of rock bottom. It's about what happens when humiliation becomes a forge, melting away weaknesses and hardening resolve. Think about it. How many times have we or someone we know been told we're not good enough, that we'll never make it, that we're irrelevant? It's a universal experience, this sting of dismissal. But Natasha's story isn't about letting that sting fester into resentment. It's about channeling it into an unstoppable force for creation and self-redefinition. So when Natasha picked up her phone and dialed her assistant, Patricia, the words that followed weren't those of a wounded ex-wife, but of a sovereign queen. "Patricia, I need you to clear my schedule for Saturday night, the Henderson Industries Gala." Patricia's response was a delightful piece of dramatic irony. "But ma'am, you own Henderson Industries. Shouldn't you be hosting?" And Natasha's cold, triumphant smile in return. "Actually, I think I'll attend as a guest this time," and Patricia makes sure Benjamin. "Richardson's contracts with all our subsidiary companies are ready for review Monday morning. All of them, ma'am. Every single one." This wasn't just about showing up. It was about strategically dismantling. It wasn't about a public confrontation out of spite. It was about exposing a calculated deception and reclaiming her narrative. Benjamin had no idea that Sterling Enterprises, the anonymous holding company that discreetly owned 40% of his business contracts, belonged to the woman he had so gleefully humiliated. He had no clue that the quiet, consistent charity donations funding his favorite causes flowed directly from her accounts. He couldn't even fathom that the woman he believed was struggling to make ends meet could buy and sell his entire company 10 times over. The invitation was meant to be a knife in her back, a cruel exhibition of what she had lost. But Benjamin was about to discover that he had invited the architect of his own downfall. Let's rewind 3 years. The last time Natasha saw Benjamin was in their divorce lawyer's office. He sat there smug next to Brittany, his hand possessively placed on her visibly growing belly. His eyes held such disdain for Natasha, as if she were a stain. He was finally scraping off his shoe. "You'll never survive without me," he had declared as they signed the papers, effectively giving him everything: their house, their cars, their business, even her jewelry. "You don't have what it takes to make it in the real world." Brittany, a mere 23, fresh out of college, giggled softly, her young face bright with victory, seeing Natasha as an old relic replaced by something newer, shinier, better. The lawyer had pushed the final papers across the table. Benjamin got everything, because technically, the business was solely in his name. Natasha, trusting and naive, had failed to legally protect herself. She walked out of that office with nothing but her clothes and a broken heart. But here's the crucial point: she also walked out with something Benjamin never recognized, something he couldn't take a fire that couldn't be extinguished. This is a common thread in many stories of personal triumph. Think of J.K. Rowling, a single mother living on welfare pouring her soul into a fantastical world after her marriage ended, or Oprah Winfrey overcoming immense hardship and poverty to build a media empire. Their rock bottom wasn't the end. It was the fertile ground for something extraordinary. Natasha's story resonates because it taps into that primal human instinct to not just survive, but to transcend. 3 years later, that fire had forged an empire. Benjamin thought he was inviting a victim to witness his success. Instead, he was inviting the puppet master who controlled his strings. Natasha poured herself a glass of wine that night, not in sorrow, but in preparation. She began planning her return to high society, envisioning the perfect dress, the perfect entrance, and most importantly, the perfect moment to reveal the truth. She wanted to savor every second of Benjamin's realization that he had thrown away the best thing that ever happened to him. The nights she had cried herself to sleep, the days she worked multiple jobs just to eat the constant self-doubt. All of it culminated in this one-night Saturday would be her declaration of war, and Benjamin had no idea what was coming. The memory of Benjamin's betrayal hit Natasha like a physical blow every time she allowed herself to revisit it. She had come home early one day, excited to surprise him with his favorite dinner after visiting her sick mother. The house was quiet, but voices drifted from upstairs from their bedroom. 2 voices, one male, one female, and they weren't talking business. Through the slightly ajar door, she saw Benjamin and Brittany, his secretary, in their marriage bed. The bed where they had planned their future, dreamed of children. Brittany, young and beautiful, whispered, "When are you going to leave her? I'm tired of hiding." Benjamin's response shattered Natasha's world. "Soon, baby. I'm just waiting for the right moment. Once I figure out how to keep the business and the house, she'll be gone. She doesn't contribute anything anyway. You're the one who makes me happy." This moment of overheard betrayal is so common in human experience, isn't it? The quiet discovery that unravels everything. It speaks to the insidious nature of deceit and the profound shock of realizing the person you trusted most is a stranger. Natasha backed away, her heart a drum solo in her chest, grabbed her keys and drove aimlessly for hours trying to process the raw horror. For 3 weeks, she lived in this unbearable limbo, hoping it was all a nightmare. She watched Benjamin and Brittany at company events, noting the lingering glances, the subtle touches. The denial was a shield against overwhelming pain. Then, one Tuesday morning, Benjamin delivered the final blow. "Natasha, we need to talk. I want a divorce. This marriage isn't working anymore." When she asked quietly, Is there someone else? He shrugged. That's not really relevant. His casual dismissal of her pain of their history was a cruelty beyond words. The divorce proceedings were swift, brutal, and utterly stacked against her Benjamin, with his expensive lawyers found ways to prove that everything they had built together legally belonged to him. The business, the house, the cars, all in his name. Natasha's barely affordable lawyer tried his best, but Benjamin's team painted her as a woman who had contributed nothing content to live off her husband's hard work. It was a vicious lie. Natasha had worked just as hard handling the creative side of their marketing company, her ideas and designs winning their biggest clients. But none of that mattered. In the cold, unfeeling world of legal documents, her trust had been her biggest weakness, her name absent from the official paperwork. The ultimate indignity came when Brittany, visibly pregnant, showed up to the last court session sitting behind Benjamin, like a prize smiling at Natasha. With false sympathy, after the papers were signed, Benjamin approached her in the hallway. "I want you to know this wasn't personal," he oozed. "You're a good person, Natasha. You'll find someone who appreciates you, someone more suited to your level." That condescension, that thinly veiled insult about her perceived inadequacy, was designed to utterly break her spirit. In a cheap motel room that night with her suitcase and $27, Natasha faced the abyss. No family except her elderly mother, no friends who weren't also Benjamin's, no job experience outside the company she no longer owned. It was a classic dark night of the soul. Many would have given up. Many do give up. But Natasha made a promise to herself she would not just survive, she would thrive. And Benjamin would regret every cruel word. She just never imagined how swiftly that day would come. This period of profound loss and subsequent reevaluation is where many true success stories begin. Consider Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx. She spent years selling fax machines door to door, constantly being rejected. But she used that experience, that financial constraint, and that desire for something more to fuel her entrepreneurial journey. Or even the legendary Walt Disney, who faced multiple bankruptcies and rejections before Disneyland and his animated empire came to fruition. These individuals, like Natasha, didn't let setbacks define them. They used them as launch pads. They were told they weren't good enough, but they learned that inner conviction often outweighs external validation. The first month after the divorce was as expected hell. A tiny studio apartment in a rough neighborhood, thin walls barely working, plumbing constant noise. She took any job, coffee shop, barista, office cleaner, call center operator. Every dollar was fought for ramen noodles, generic cereal, walking everywhere, thrift store clothes. It was a brutal existence. But the poverty wasn't the hardest part. It was the crushing loneliness and the insidious voice in her head. Benjamin's voice telling her she wasn't good enough, that she was destined to struggle forever. Then 3 months in, something shifted. While cleaning the offices of a small investment firm late one night, she overheard a conversation between two partners. They were discussing a client on the verge of losing a fortune due to market trends they couldn't decipher. Natasha, who had studied business and finance in college, before switching to marketing, realized she saw the solution they were missing. It was a flicker of her old brilliance, an intuition for patterns and numbers that had been dormant. The next morning, she did something terrifying. She called the investment firm and, identifying herself as the cleaning woman, asked to share an idea about their client's portfolio. Robert Chin, one of the partners, was initially annoyed, but something in her voice, perhaps the raw conviction of someone with nothing left to lose, made him listen. She laid out her analysis, a strategy to save their client's investment. Robert was skeptical but desperate. He tried her suggestion. 2 weeks later, the client's portfolio had recovered, and then some. This is a pivotal moment, a classic David and Goliath scenario in the corporate world. It's not about credentials, it's about insights. It's a testament to how often brilliant ideas are overlooked because they don't come from the right source. How many janitors, assistants, or overlooked employees hold the keys to a company's next big breakthrough but are never asked or are too afraid to speak up? Natasha's courage in that moment was monumental. Robert offered her a job as a junior analyst. The pay was meager, barely more than her 3 other jobs combined, but it was a foothold. She quit the coffee shop and call center, but kept cleaning offices at night to make ends meet. For 6 months, she worked 18-hour days, devouring everything she could about finance and investment. Library books, market reports, asking stupid questions that made her colleagues laugh. She didn't care. And slowly she began to excel. Her instincts about market trends were almost supernatural. She spotted opportunities and risks others missed. Within a year, she was handling major accounts and making more money than she had ever imagined. But Natasha wasn't content with just being successful at someone else's company. Her ambition, fueled by past humiliation and a newfound self-belief, was boundless. She saved every penny building towards something bigger. She started making her own small investments, turning hundreds into thousands, then thousands into tens of thousands. 2 years after starting at the investment firm, she had saved enough to launch her own company, Sterling Enterprises. The name was chosen carefully, established, trustworthy, yet revealing nothing about its true owner. She started small, acquiring struggling businesses, seeing potential where others saw only failure. Within 6 months, Sterling owned 5 small companies. Within a year, 15. And crucial to her plan, Natasha meticulously kept her identity a secret. All business was conducted through lawyers and representatives. She never appeared at board meetings or public events to the business world. Sterling Enterprises was controlled by a mysterious, elusive figure who preferred the shadows. This anonymity was a strategic masterpiece. It allowed her to move freely, unencumbered by the baggage of being Benjamin Richardson's ex-wife. It also allowed her to do something far more potent, keep a silent, watchful eye on Benjamin. As Sterling Enterprises grew, Natasha strategically acquired companies that did business with Benjamin's firm. She became one of his biggest clients, without him ever knowing who was signing his paychecks. She watched from the shadows as Benjamin and Brittany paraded their success. Newspaper articles, expensive vacations, new houses. She knew Brittany's lavish shopping habits, Benjamin's golf tournaments, their expansion plans. What they didn't know was that 40% of their revenue flowed from contracts with companies owned by the woman Benjamin had so casually discarded. They were building their empire oblivious on the very foundation of Natasha's silent success. This concept of quiet building versus loud showing is a powerful contrast. So often we see people eager to showcase their achievements, sometimes even before they've truly solidified. Benjamin was a master of appearances, cultivating an image of success that was ironically dependent on the very person he publicly scorned, Natasha. On the other hand, embodies the principle of speak softly and carry a big stick. Her power was in her discretion, her strategic patience, and her unparalleled understanding of the interconnectedness of the business world. This is a lesson many entrepreneurs could learn sometimes. The most effective way to build lasting power is to do it out of the spotlight, letting results speak louder than rhetoric. As she prepared for Benjamin's gala, Natasha stood in her corner office on the 42nd floor of the Sterling building. From her floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see the entire business district, including the modest 15-story building where Benjamin Richardson's marketing firm occupied 3 floors. She often wondered if Benjamin ever looked up at the anonymous corporate tower of the Sterling building and mused about its owner. He never knew it was her, just as he never knew that her empire of 47 companies across 12 industries ranging from tech startups to manufacturing firms, from consulting agencies to retail chains, was subtly reshaping his world. Each company operated independently, its original name and management structure intact. Only the ownership had changed, buried deep in legal documents few bothered to examine. "Ma'am, your 900 is here," Patricia announced. Thomas Williams, CEO of Henderson Industries. One of Sterling's largest subsidiaries, entered Henderson Industries, was Benjamin's biggest client, relying on his firm for marketing their luxury hotels, Thomas. One of the few who knew Sterling's true owner expressed his concerns about Richardson Group's work. "Their creative team seems to have lost their edge," he admitted. "The campaign they proposed is generic and uninspiring." Natasha leaned back, absorbing this. "What do you recommend?" "I think it's time to consider other options," Thomas said. Richardson Group has been coasting on their reputation for too long. Interesting, Natasha mused. I understand Richardson Group was once known for innovative campaigns. What changed? Thomas shrugged. Hard to say. Their best work was actually from several years ago, back when they had a different creative director. I believe it was the owner's wife who handled that side of the business, Natasha's. Smile was cold. His ex-wife, you mean? Yes, that's right. Shame. Her campaigns were brilliant. The work they've produced since then has been mediocre at best. I see, Natasha replied. Well, Thomas, I trust your judgment. If you think it's time to explore other options, then that's what we should do. But let's not rush. Take your time. This conversation reveals Benjamin's blindness not just to Natasha's new power, but to the very source of his old success. He had assumed he was the mastermind, the creative genius, but it was Natasha, the dead weight who had been the creative engine, the visionary behind their most successful campaigns. He had taken the face, the schmoozing, the deal closing. She had provided the substance, the talent, the results. Now, without her, he was floundering, and his biggest client, unknowingly controlled by her, was losing confidence. The irony was indeed delicious. Natasha's phone rang. Patricia confirmed the Gala guest list included a dozen CEOs from companies Sterling either owned or significantly did business with, including Thomas Williams. Perfect, Natasha smiled. The dress, the jewelry, the car, all ready, and Patricia. Natasha added, I want a comprehensive report on all of Sterling's business relationships with the Richardson Group, every subsidiary, every contract, every payment over the past 2 years. Every single detail I want to know exactly how much of. Benjamin's success depends on our money. Pulling up the financial reports, Natasha saw the numbers starkly laid out. Over the past 2 years, 43% of Benjamin's revenue came from Sterling-owned companies. Without those contracts, his business would be struggling to stay afloat. She reread Benjamin's handwritten note. I thought you might enjoy seeing how far we've come. The sheer arrogance of it still amazed her. He wanted to parade his success, rub her face in what she had lost. He didn't realize his success was a house of cards, built on her foundation, funded by her money. She was the puppet master, and he was dancing to her tune, completely unaware. She then pulled up a detailed dossier on Benjamin and Brittany's life. She knew their mortgage payments, their car loans, their credit card bills. She knew their flashy lifestyle masked a highly leveraged existence, utterly dependent on the continued success of the business. She knew Brittany spent more on clothes and jewelry in a month than most people made in a year. She knew Benjamin had started drinking more heavily, likely struggling with stress he didn't fully comprehend. She even knew their marriage wasn't as happy as the society pages portrayed. Knowledge, as they say, is power, and Natasha had an arsenal. She had been watching, waiting, planning for the perfect moment. That moment was finally here. The designer boutique on Fifth Avenue, a place Natasha could never have afforded 3 years ago, was now a building she owned. The head designer, Marianne, adjusted the flowing midnight blue gown. Stunning, Marianne declared. Natasha studied herself, elegant, expensive, sophisticated, but not overtly flashy. She wanted Benjamin to see her think she looked good, but not so good that he'd immediately suspect the extent of her transformation. It's perfect, she decided. 2 hours later, she left with the dress shoes and jewelry all meticulously chosen to send precisely the right message. Successful, yes, but still within Benjamin's preconceived narrative of a woman who had managed to get by. She didn't want him to be too suspicious before the reveal. Her next stop was the salon. Her stylist, Marcus, noticed her focused energy. Tonight is going to be a very special evening, Natasha told him, more like a business meeting disguised as a social event. While Marcus worked, Patricia's messages buzzed in final gala details, confirmed car at 7 security discreetly stationed, financial reports ready. And most importantly, Thomas Williams and several other Sterling-affiliated CEOs would be there witnesses. When the moment came, her claims would be verified. All done, Marcus announced. Natasha smiled at her reflection, confident, successful, and ready. Benjamin was expecting a broken woman. He was about to face someone he no longer recognized. Back in her apartment, the gown hung like a battle uniform. The jewelry glittered. The shoes waited. She reviewed Patricia's reports. Richardson Group's dependence on Sterling controlled contracts was absolute. Pull those contracts and Benjamin's business would collapse in 6 months. A dark satisfaction settled over her. 3 years she had built while he reveled in ignorant prosperity. Tonight that ignorance would end. Her phone rang. It was her mother. "Eleanor, Natasha, honey, how are you feeling about tonight?" Eleanor was the only one who knew the full truth of Natasha's transformation, her biggest supporter through the darkest days. "I'm ready," Natasha affirmed. "More than ready, are you sure?" her mother probed. "You could just continue living your successful life without confronting Benjamin? Why put yourself through this?" Natasha paused. It wasn't about money, or even pure revenge anymore. It was about justice. Benjamin had tried to destroy her spirit, convince her of her worthlessness, take everything. Tonight was about proving to herself as much as to him that she was stronger than he ever imagined. It was about finally closing that open, festering chapter. "Because he needs to know Mama," she said. "He needs to understand what he threw away, and he needs to face the consequences. Just remember, baby," Eleanor cautioned, "you've already won. You don't need his validation or his apology." "I know, Mama," Natasha replied, "but I need to do this." After hanging up, Natasha retrieved a small velvet box from her safe. Inside, her original wedding ring, the simple band Benjamin had given her when they were young, struggling building their first business. She had kept it not out of sentiment, but as a reminder of the woman she used to be. Tonight, she would finally let go of that woman forever. This preparatory phase, the quiet ritual before the storm, is critical in any major confrontation. It's not just about logistics, it's about mental readiness, emotional fortitude. Athletes visualize their victory. Performers run through their lines. Natasha was preparing for the performance of a lifetime, not for an audience, but for herself and for the man who had dismissed her. The wedding ring, a symbol of a past she was ready to shed, represented the final step in her transformation. She was no longer the naive wife, she was the self-made titan. At exactly 630, she began to dress, each piece of her outfit a piece of armor. The dress, the shoes, the jewelry, transforming her into someone new, someone powerful. At 700, her driver knocked. "Mrs. Richardson, your car is ready." One last look in the mirror. The woman looking back was confident, successful, ready. "Let's go," she said, and walked out to face her, past, ready to reclaim her future. The Henderson Grand Hotel ballroom was a dazzling spectacle of luxury crystal chandeliers, beautifully dressed guests, flowing champagne gourmet appetizers. The annual charity gala was a social event of the season. Natasha arrived fashionably late, precisely as planned. Stepping out of the sleek black town car onto the red carpet, she felt the eyes of photographers, the hushed murmurs. Inside, the party was in full swing. CEOs, investors, politicians, socialites mingled. She accepted a glass of champagne, moving through the crowd, scanning for familiar faces. Natasha Richardson. Thomas Williams approached, a surprised smile on his face. "Thomas, how lovely to see you here. You look absolutely stunning. Thank you, I wouldn't miss it, it's for such a good cause." As they chatted, Natasha noted other Sterling-affiliated executives: Robert Chin from her former investment firm, Margaret Foster, CEO of one of Sterling's retail chains, all in attendance, all future witnesses. Perfect. Then the voice she hadn't heard in 3 years, but that still sent a chill down her spine. Natasha, Benjamin Richardson. He looked older, streaks of gray in his hair, lines around his eyes. Still handsome in his expensive tuxedo, but something harder, more calculating in his face. Beside him, Brittany now. Mrs. Benjamin Richardson, stunning, her blonde hair, perfect, her slim figure enhanced by a gown that likely cost a fortune. She looked at Natasha with poorly concealed disdain. "Benjamin," Natasha said calmly, "thank you for the invitation. I wasn't sure you'd come," he replied, his eyes taking in her appearance. A flicker of surprise. Perhaps that she looked so well. "You look well. Thank you. Life has been good to me." Brittany stepped closer, her hand sliding possessively through Benjamin's arm. "Natasha, isn't it? I don't think we've been properly introduced. I'm Brittany Richardson." The emphasis on the last name was a deliberate, petty jab. Natasha unruffled, smiled graciously. Congratulations on your marriage. I hope you're very happy together. Oh, we are, Brittany gushed, flashing her enormous diamond ring. Benjamin has given me everything I ever dreamed of. We just got back from Paris, a belated honeymoon trip. We stayed in the most beautiful suite at the Four Seasons. Natasha nodded politely, already aware of the trip. She owned the hotel chain that had provided their accommodations, though they didn't know that. That sounds wonderful, she said. I've always loved Paris. Have you been recently? Benjamin asked, a sharp edge to his tone. I imagine international travel isn't exactly in your budget these days. The comment was designed to sting, to remind her of her supposedly reduced circumstances. Natasha felt the old pain stir, but quickly suppressed it. She was far beyond the reach of his casual cruelties. Now I managed to get around, she said lightly. Well, it's good to see you're managing, Brittany chimed in with false sweetness. It must be difficult starting over at your age, but I'm sure you'll find your way eventually. The condescension was unmistakable. To Brittany, Natasha was a cautionary tale, the discarded first wife, a warning of what happens if you don't hold on tight. Actually, Natasha said, her voice even. I found starting over to be quite liberating. Sometimes losing everything gives you the freedom to become something better than you ever imagined possible. Benjamin's eyes narrowed, puzzled by her tone. What exactly are you doing these days, Natasha? For work, I mean. Consulting, she replied vaguely. Business, development, investment advice, that sort of thing? Consulting, Brittany repeated with a small dismissive laugh. Oh, nice. That must be interesting work. It has its rewards, I'm sure Benjamin added, though I imagine the client base is somewhat limited. The business world can be very exclusive, especially for people without the right connections. Another deliberate dig, reminding her that their divorce had severed her from his network, leaving her in his mind an outsider scrabbling for scraps. You'd be surprised, Natasha countered. I found that talent and results matter more than connections. Good work speaks for itself, does it? Benjamin's smile was cold. Well, I hope that philosophy works out for you, though I have to say the business world has become increasingly competitive since you left the field. It takes a certain kind of person to succeed at the highest levels. The implication was clear. She wasn't that kind of person, never had been, never would be. Natasha felt a familiar rage building, but kept her expression calm. You're absolutely right, Benjamin. It does take a certain kind of person, the kind who doesn't give up when things get difficult, the kind who learns from failure and comes back stronger. Oh, how inspiring, Brittany said, with another saccharine laugh. You should write self-help books. Before Natasha could respond, the lights dimmed and an announcement called everyone to dinner. As the crowd moved, Benjamin leaned closer to Natasha. I hope you enjoy the evening, he said quietly. I thought it might be educational for you to see how the other half lives. With that, he and Brittany walked away, leaving Natasha alone. But instead of feeling diminished, she felt energized. Everything was unfolding perfectly. Benjamin and Brittany had in a few short minutes revealed their full arrogance, their cruelty, their utter certainty of their own superiority. They had no idea what was coming. This entire interaction is a masterclass in psychological warfare. Benjamin and Brittany, blinded by their own self-importance, unwittingly played right into Natasha's hands. Their casual cruelty, their need to belittle, stemmed from a deep-seated insecurity, a need to validate their own fragile success by tearing down another. Natasha, however, had nothing to prove to them. Her calm demeanor, her veiled answers were not signs of weakness, but of immense strength. She was not reacting. She was observing. She was gathering the final pieces of information she needed to execute her plan, letting them dig their own graves with every condescending remark. It's a reminder that true power doesn't need to announce itself. It reveals itself when the time is right. Dinner was an elaborate affair. Natasha found herself at a table with several business leaders she recognized, including Margaret Foster and two other sterling CEOs. Benjamin and Brittany held court at the head table. Natasha observed them. Benjamin in his element, charming, telling stories, making everyone laugh. Brittany basking in his reflected glory, showing off her expensive jewelry, playing the part of the perfect trophy wife. During the second course, Benjamin rose and approached the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention for just a moment." The room quieted. He looked confident at ease. "First, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight and for your generous support of the Children's Education Foundation." Polite applause. "I also want to take a moment to acknowledge someone special who's here with us tonight." Benjamin continued, his eyes finding Natasha. "My ex-wife, Natasha Richardson, has joined us. This evening, I thought it would be nice for her to see how successful our little business has become since our divorce." The room fell silent, an uncomfortable tension settling in. This was clearly inappropriate. A public spectacle. Every eye turned to Natasha. You see, Benjamin went on savoring the silence. When Natasha and I divorced 3 years ago, she was convinced that she was essential to our company's success. She thought that without her creative input, we would struggle. Well, I'm happy to report that Richardson Group has actually thrived since her departure. We've grown by 200%, expanded into new markets, and just this year we were named Marketing Firm of the Year by Business Excellence magazine. More uncomfortable silence. Even Brittany looked uncertain. "So Natasha," Benjamin said, raising his wine glass in her direction, "I want to thank you. Your departure forced us to reach new heights. Sometimes losing dead weight is exactly what a business needs to soar." The insult hung in the air, devastating in its public delivery, in front of the city's most influential people. Some guests looked appalled. Others seemed entertained. Natasha felt their stares, imagined their whispered conversations later, but instead of humiliation, a calm settled over her. Benjamin had just made a fatal mistake. He had attacked her publicly, claimed credit for a success that was in fact hers, and given her the perfect opening. She stood slowly, her movements graceful and controlled. The room watched as she picked up her own wine glass and smiled at Benjamin. "Thank you, Benjamin," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent ballroom. "That's very kind of you to say. I'm so glad Richardson Group has done well. Success suits you." She paused, letting the tension build. "I'm especially glad to hear that you've grown by 200%. That's quite impressive for a company that I understand gets significant revenue from clients like Henderson Industries." Thomas Williams from his nearby table nodded. "That's correct. Henderson has been a major client of Richardson Group for the past 2 years. And Sterling Manufacturing added Robert Chin. They've done excellent work for us as well. Sterling Real Estate Development too called out Margaret Foster." Natasha smiled as more Sterling-affiliated executives confirmed their business relationships with Richardson. Group confusion clouded Benjamin's face. He was beginning to realize that all his biggest clients seemed to know this woman he had just publicly humiliated. "It's interesting," Natasha continued, still holding her wine glass, "how interconnected the business world can be. You never know who might be behind the companies you work with. Sometimes the most successful people are the ones you never see coming." "What are you getting at?" Benjamin asked, his confidence wavering. "Oh, nothing specific," Natasha replied innocently. "I'm just observing how small the business world really is, how the same names keep appearing in different contexts, how success can be built on relationships you don't even realize you have." Brittany looked back and forth, sensing something was happening, but not understanding. Natasha went on, "Take Sterling Enterprises, for example. Very successful company, from what I understand, owns businesses across multiple industries, but nobody really knows who runs it. Very mysterious." Benjamin's face began to change as the name Sterling registered. He was starting to make connections. "The interesting thing about anonymous ownership," Natasha said, her voice conversational, but carrying to every corner of the room, "is that it allows you to observe how people really behave when they think no one important is watching. You get to see their true character." Benjamin set down his microphone, his hands shaking. His face went pale. Natasha could see the wheels turning in his mind as he started to put the pieces together. "But of course," she concluded, raising her wine glass high, "sometimes it's more fun to step out of the shadows and let people know exactly who they've been dealing with. The room was dead silent, every guest hanging on her words, sensing something extraordinary. Benjamin's voice was barely a whisper. "What are you saying?" Natasha's smile was radiant and terrible. "I'm saying, Benjamin, that you were right about one thing. Your departure from my life did allow me to reach new heights. Heights you can't even imagine." Benjamin froze, his face growing paler by the second as the implications sank in. The ballroom was utterly silent, guests exchanging confused glances. "Sterling Enterprises." Benjamin repeated slowly, "You're saying you know about Sterling Enterprises? Know about it?" Natasha laughed, a sound both musical and menacing. "Benjamin, I think you're still not quite understanding the situation." She began walking slowly toward the head table, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Every step was measured, deliberate. "Let me help clarify things for you," she said. "Thomas, would you mind telling everyone what percentage of Henderson Industries' marketing budget goes to Richardson Group?" Thomas Williams, fascinated by the unfolding drama, consulted his phone. "Approximately 60% of our annual marketing budget. Richardson Group handles our luxury hotel chains, our restaurant division, and our real estate development projects. And Robert, what about your investment firm? Robert Chin?" Chin nodded. "Richardson Group manages our client communications and brand development. They've been with us for 18 months now. Margaret Sterling Real Estate Development Richardson Group has used them for all our major campaigns for the past 2 years," Margaret confirmed. "They handle everything from our residential projects to our commercial developments." Natasha reached the head table, standing directly across from Benjamin, who was now gripping the microphone stand for support. "Are you starting to see the pattern? Benjamin? I don't understand what you're implying." He stammered, his voice betraying his mounting fear. "Henderson Industries, Sterling Manufacturing, Sterling Real Estate Development, Sterling Investment Management," Natasha recited. "All major clients of Richardson Group, all very successful companies, all with one very interesting thing in common." She paused, letting the tension build as Benjamin's breathing became rapid and shallow. "They're all owned by the same parent company, Sterling Enterprises." Gasps rippled through the audience. Several guests pulled out their phones, looking up. Sterling Enterprises, their faces showing shock as they discovered the scope of its holdings. Brittany, silent until now, finally found her voice. "That's impossible. Richardson Group has dozens of major clients. You can't possibly be suggesting that some mysterious company—" "Not mysterious at all," Natasha cut in calmly. "Just private. Sterling Enterprises owns 47 companies across 12 industries. Those companies employ over 15,000 people and generate annual revenues of approximately $230 million. The numbers hit the room like physical blows. Guests openly stared at Natasha with new recognition and respect. The woman Benjamin had just publicly humiliated was one of the most successful business owners in the city. That's not possible," Benjamin whispered. "You're lying. After the divorce, you had nothing. I know because I took everything. The house, the cars, the business. Everything was mine. You took everything that was legally yours," Natasha agreed, "which, thanks to my naive trust in you, was indeed everything we had built together. You left me with $27 and a suitcase full of clothes." Her voice resonated, and several guests looked appalled at this revelation of Benjamin's ruthlessness. "But you made one critical error, Benjamin. You assumed that what we built together was the limit of what I was capable of building. You thought that without you, I would crumble and disappear. You never considered that losing everything might actually free me to become something much more powerful than I had ever been before." Benjamin shook his head in denial. "Even if what you're saying is true, even if you somehow managed to build some kind of business empire, Richardson Group doesn't depend on any single client. We're diversified. We have contracts with dozens of companies. 43%, Natasha said simply. What the 43% of Richardson Group's revenue comes from companies owned by Sterling Enterprises. Would you like me to break that down for you?" She pulled out her phone, reading from the financial reports. Patricia had prepared Henderson Industries $2.8 million annually, Sterling Manufacturing $1.6 million, Sterling Real Estate 2.2 million, Sterling Investment Management. 1.1 million, Sterling Technology Solutions. 800,000, Sterling Retail Group. 1.3 million. Should I continue? With each number, Benjamin seemed to shrink. The color drained from his face. He was openly perspiring. That's, he started, then stopped, unable to form coherent thoughts. Nearly 4 million annually, Natasha finished for him. Without those contracts, Richardson Group would be operating at a significant loss. Your company would be bankrupt within 6 months. The revelation sent shockwaves. Business leaders understood immediately. Benjamin Richardson, who had just publicly humiliated his ex-wife, had unknowingly built his success on her money. "This is insane," Brittany shrieked, her voice shrill with panic. "You're making this up. There's no way you could own all those companies. We would have known. Benjamin would have known." "Woody?" Natasha asked, turning to the younger woman. "Tell me, Brittany, how much attention did Benjamin pay to the fine print of his contracts? Did he research the ownership structure of his clients, or was he too busy enjoying the lifestyle those contracts provided to ask questions about where the money was really coming from?" Brittany looked to Benjamin for support, but he was staring at Natasha as if seeing a ghost. The confident businessman was gone, replaced by a man struggling to process the magnitude of what he was learning. "You see," Natasha continued, "the beautiful thing about anonymous ownership is that it lets you see how people really behave when they think no one important is watching. For 2 years, I've been observing how you treat the people you think are beneath you. I've watched you take credit for work that was actually funded by my companies. I've seen how you talk about me to your friends and business associates." She moved closer to Benjamin, her voice dropping to a conversational level that still carried. "Through the microphone, I've seen who you really are, Benjamin, and I've been very disappointed." Victoria Henderson, the gala host, approached the microphone visibly nervous. "Perhaps we should take a short break," she suggested diplomatically. "Allow everyone to process what we've heard, actually." Natasha said, turning to face the crowd, "I think this is the perfect time to address something important. You see, everyone here tonight believes they were invited by Benjamin and Brittany Richardson, but that's not entirely accurate." She gestured to Victoria. "Victoria, would you mind telling everyone who actually funds this annual charity gala?" Victoria, uncomfortable but honest, replied. "The primary sponsor has always been an anonymous donor who covers most of the event costs and matches all donations, dollar for dollar. We've never met this donor personally. All arrangements are made through representatives. And how long has this arrangement been in place?" 3 years now. The anonymous donor approached us shortly after the previous main sponsor withdrew their support. Natasha nodded. "Benjamin, do you remember when? You volunteered to host this gala 3 years ago when you told everyone you were taking over as the primary sponsor." Benjamin's face was now a sickly gray. You can't be the anonymous donor who has been funding this event for 3 years. The person whose money has allowed you to take credit for charitable giving while actually contributing very little of your own funds." Natasha's smile was razor sharp. "Yes, Benjamin, that was me." The gasps from the audience were louder this time. Guests openly stared at Benjamin with disgust, realizing he had been taking credit for someone else's generosity. "But it gets better," Natasha continued. "Victoria, would you please tell everyone how much the anonymous donor has contributed to the Children's Education Foundation over the past 3 years?" Victoria consulted her records. The anonymous donor has contributed over $2 million in direct funding, plus matching donations. It's been the largest source of funding in the foundation's history. $2 million, Natasha repeated, letting the number sink in. "Benjamin, in those same 3 years, how much have you and Brittany personally contributed to the foundation?" Benjamin opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Brittany stepped forward, defensive. "We've contributed our time and effort organizing these events. That's worth something." "Of course it is," Natasha agreed pleasantly, "though I should mention that the event planning for these galas has been handled by Sterling Event Management, another subsidiary of Sterling Enterprises. So technically, you've been taking credit for organizing events that were actually planned and executed by my employees." The room erupted in murmurs as guests fully grasped the scope of what they were witnessing. Benjamin Richardson, whose reputation was built on his business success and charitable work, had been living off the achievements of the woman he had publicly scorned. "This is impossible," Benjamin said desperately. "Even if everything you're saying is true, how could you have kept it secret? How could I not have known? Because you never bothered to look." Natasha replied simply. "You were so convinced of your own superiority, so certain that I was irrelevant to your success, that you never questioned where your good fortune was really coming from. You saw what you wanted to see." She turned to address the entire room. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to apologize for this public display. I know this isn't what you expected tonight, but sometimes the truth has a way of demanding to be heard." Margaret Foster stood up. "Are you really saying that you've been secretly supporting Benjamin's business for 3 years while he's been publicly dismissing you?" "That's exactly what I'm saying. I've been paying for his lifestyle, funding his reputation, and enabling his success, all while he told anyone who would listen that I was worthless without him." Thomas Williams shook his head in amazement. That's incredible. You've been playing a 3-year game while he didn't even know there was a board." "But why?" asked Robert Chin. "Why would you support someone who treated you so badly?" Natasha considered the question. "At first, it wasn't intentional. When I started acquiring companies, I focused on businesses with good fundamentals and growth potential. It was only after I had purchased several of Benjamin's clients that I realized the connection. And once I understood what was happening, I decided to see how far it would go." She looked directly at Benjamin. "I wanted to see if success would humble you. Hope that maybe given enough time and prosperity, you might develop some perspective about what you had done to me. I thought you might eventually realize that your good fortune was too convenient to be entirely your own doing." "And did it?" Someone called out. Natasha's laugh was bitter. Quite the opposite. The more successful Richardson Group became, the more credit Benjamin took. The more money flowed in, the more convinced he became of his own genius, and the more secure he felt, the crueler he became. In his references to me, tonight was supposed to be the culmination of that cruelty. He invited me here specifically to humiliate me, to show me how much better his life was without me. He wanted to rub my face in his success and make sure I understood my place in his world. Benjamin finally found his voice. "A croak, Natasha." If what you're saying is true, then what, Benjamin? Then you're sorry. Then you want to make amends. Then you realize you made a mistake." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. The microphone still picked up. "It's too late for apologies, Benjamin. You had 3 years to show me who you really were, and you showed me someone I don't recognize. Someone cruel and petty and arrogant. Someone who takes credit for other people's work and generosity while treating them like garbage." The room was silent. "So, here's what's going to happen," Natasha said, her voice returning to normal volume. "Effective Monday morning, Sterling Enterprises will be terminating all contracts with Richardson Group, all of them Henderson Industries, Sterling Manufacturing, Sterling Real Estate Development. Every single subsidiary will be finding new marketing partners." Benjamin's legs seemed to give out and he grabbed the podium. "You can't. That would destroy everything we've built, everything you've built." Natasha's voice was sharp with anger. "You built nothing, Benjamin. You were a middleman taking credit for my success. The only thing you built was your own ego." She turned to the audience one final time. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for your patience during this unexpected revelation. I hope you'll continue to support the Children's Education Foundation, which does genuinely important work. And I hope you'll remember that sometimes the most powerful people in the room are the ones you never see coming." With that, she walked away, leaving Benjamin collapsed against the podium and Brittany staring after her in shock. The game was over, and Natasha had won. 3 months after the gala, Natasha sat in her office reading the morning business news. The lead story was about Richardson Group's bankruptcy. The article detailed how the firm had lost several major clients simultaneously and been unable to recover financially. Benjamin's quotes were pathetic, blaming unforeseeable market changes and unfortunate contract cancellations beyond our control. There was no mention of his ex-wife or the dramatic Gala revelation, though anyone in the business community who had been there knew exactly what happened. Patricia entered with the morning mail. "The final reports from all the terminated Richardson contracts are on your desk," she said. "Every subsidiary has successfully transitioned to new marketing partners. Several are reporting better results than they ever achieved with Richardson. Group excellent." Natasha replied, "What about the charity foundation? Donations are actually up from last year. It seems the publicity from the gala." "Despite the drama, increased awareness of their work?" Victoria Henderson asked. "Me to pass along her thanks for your continued support. Good, what else you have?" 3 acquisition proposals, a conference call with the Sterling Technology Board at 2, and the final fitting for your dress for tomorrow night's Medical Research Foundation gala." Natasha smiled. "The irony isn't lost on me that I'm attending more charity events now than I ever did when I was married to Benjamin. You also have several interview requests from business magazines. Forbes wants to do a cover story on Sterling Enterprises now that you've decided to be more public about your ownership." "I think it's time," Natasha said. "The anonymous approach served its purpose, but now I want other young entrepreneurs to see that it's possible to rebuild after losing everything." Buried on page 3 of the business section was a small item about Benjamin and Brittany's divorce. The financial stress of Richardson Group's collapse had been too much. Brittany had filed citing irreconcilable differences, though sources suggested she left after discovering the full extent of their debt. The article mentioned Brittany was reportedly dating a significantly older, financially stable real estate developer she'd met at a country club charity function Natasha felt no satisfaction in. Benjamin's personal troubles. If anything, she felt a quiet pity. He had lost everything because he couldn't see past his own ego. His downfall wasn't her vindictiveness. It was the inevitable consequence of building a house of cards on someone else's foundation. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Saw the Business Journal article." "How are you feeling today?" Natasha typed back. "Free. Finally, completely free." And it was true. For 3 years, she had carried the weight of Benjamin's betrayal and the need to prove him wrong. The confrontation at the gala had lifted that burden. She no longer needed his validation. She had proven to herself that she was stronger and more capable than he could ever imagine. A knock. "Come in." Thomas Williams entered, looking nervous. "Natasha, I hope you don't mind me stopping by. I wanted to speak with you about something personal." "Of course, Thomas, please sit down. I've been thinking about what happened at the gala, about everything you revealed that night. I wanted you to know that I think what you did was remarkable." "Thank you, but I'm not sure it was remarkable. It was just necessary." "No, I disagree. You could have destroyed Benjamin quietly behind the scenes. Instead, you forced him to confront the truth publicly. You made him face the consequences in front of everyone he had tried to impress." Thomas leaned forward. "More importantly, you showed everyone in that room that they had been underestimating you. You changed how every person there thinks about power and success and the assumptions we make about people." Natasha considered his words. "I hope some good comes from it. I hope other people who have been dismissed or underestimated might find some inspiration in seeing that. It's possible to rebuild and thrive." "They will," Thomas assured her. "In fact, that's part of why I'm here. My daughter just graduated from business school, and she's struggling to find her footing. She's brilliant, but she's facing the same kind of dismissive attitudes you faced with Benjamin. Would you consider mentoring her?" The request surprised Natasha, but it also pleased her. "I'd be honored to meet with her." "Thank you. I think you could teach her things about resilience and strategy that she'll never learn in any classroom." After Thomas left, Natasha walked to her window, looking out over the city. The building where Richardson Group used to be was now occupied by a tech startup, one of the companies she had helped finance through Sterling Enterprises. She thought about the woman she had been 3 years ago sitting in that cheap motel room with $27 and a broken heart. That woman would never have imagined the view from this office or the empire she would build. But that woman had also possessed something. Benjamin never recognized an unbreakable spirit and the determination to rise from any fall. The intercom buzzed. "Ma'am, you have a visitor?" "She says her name is Eleanor Richardson and that she's your mother." Natasha smiled. "Send her up, Patricia." A few minutes later, her mother entered, looking around in amazement. "Baby, this is incredible. I'm so proud of what you've accomplished." "Thank you, Mama. I couldn't have done it without your support during those dark days." Eleanor hugged her daughter tightly. "I brought you something," she said, pulling a small wrapped package from her purse. "I've been saving it for the right moment." Natasha opened it to find a simple picture frame with a photo from her college graduation. Young, hopeful, ready to take on the world. "I want you to remember her," Eleanor said softly. "That young woman who believed she could do anything. She was right." Natasha placed the frame on her desk. "You know what the best part is, Mama? I'm not done yet. This is just the beginning." As the afternoon sun streamed through her office windows, Natasha Richardson, founder and CEO of Sterling Enterprises, anonymous philanthropist, and one of the most successful business leaders in the city, began planning her next acquisition. This story, Natasha's story, offers us so many profound lessons. Firstly, it's a powerful testament to resilience. The human spirit, when pushed to its absolute limit, often discovers reservoirs of strength it never knew it possessed, being utterly stripped bare. As Natasha was, can be terrifying, but it can also be liberating. It forces a complete reevaluation of self-worth, detaching it from external validations like wealth status or even a relationship. When everything you thought defined you is gone, you find out what truly remains, and often that core is unbreakable. Secondly, it highlights the danger of hubris and unchecked ego. Benjamin's downfall wasn't due to bad luck or market shifts. It was a direct consequence of his arrogance and his inability to see past his own self-importance. He underestimated Natasha, not just as an individual, but as a force. His desire to publicly humiliate her, to rub salt in an old wound, was the ultimate act of self-sabotage. It blinded him to the reality that his empire was built on a foundation he no longer controlled, in life and in business. Humility and a realistic assessment of one's dependencies are crucial. When you believe you are indispensable, when you take credit for others' contributions, you set yourself up for a spectacular fall. Thirdly, Natasha's journey is a masterclass in strategic patience and silent execution. Instead of reacting emotionally or seeking immediate, visible revenge, she chose a long game. She built her power discreetly, acquiring control and influence without fanfare. This anonymity was not just a shield, it was a weapon. It allowed her to observe Benjamin's true character, to understand the dynamics of his business, and to strategically position herself for a definitive victory. This teaches us that sometimes the most effective way to overcome adversity is not through loud declarations, but through quiet, consistent, and strategic action, allowing your success to speak for itself eventually. Fourthly, the story underscores the importance of legal and financial literacy and self-protection. Natasha's initial naivety in trusting Benjamin implicitly with their shared assets left her vulnerable. While her story ends in triumph, it's a stark reminder that in any partnership, especially romantic ones that involve shared ventures, clear legal protections are paramount. Her subsequent meticulous attention to legal and financial details in Sterling Enterprises was a direct lesson learned from her devastating experience. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, Natasha's story is about redefining success and finding true freedom. For Benjamin, success was about public image accolades and material possessions. For Natasha, after the initial sting of betrayal, success became about self-reliance, genuine accomplishment, and the ability to choose her path. Her ultimate declaration of freedom came not with Benjamin's ruin, but with her mother's text message expressing a feeling of being finally completely free. This freedom wasn't granted to her. It was earned through immense struggle and unwavering determination. Benjamin had been wrong about almost everything, but he had been right about one thing: losing. Dead weight was exactly what she needed to soar. She had just never imagined that he would be the dead weight she needed to lose. What dead weight are you carrying? What limiting beliefs or toxic relationships are holding you back? Natasha's journey tells us that sometimes the end of one chapter isn't a tragedy, but the courageous beginning of an entirely new, unforeseen, and ultimately more powerful story.